Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show. Home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. This episode, you put your TV where? Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help you save time, money, and aggravation. This edition is entitled, You Put Your TV Where? To help explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy, John. John, what's been going on this week?
Yeah. Hey, Larry. Nice to be here. I have been doing a lot of work, as you know, in a house, a couple of rental houses, and just it's like you. It's been a never-ending thing that's been going on here with a lot of handyman type of work. So
we call it job security, is what we call it.
Yeah, it's been fun. And there's been certain jobs I like and certain jobs I don't like. But
gee, it's like at your house,
right? Exactly. So it's all been good. And I know that one of the topics that is coming up here is hanging TVs.
That's right. But first, it's a word from our sponsors. It's Handyman Services by Service Group International. Yes, that's John and I. If you need a handyman in North Atlanta, John and I would love to help you. Look us up at hssgi.com. That's Handyman Services by Service Group International. So we're talking about hanging TVs, right, John? Sorry about it. I had to do that blatant plug since we've both been talking about it. Shameless. It's a shameless plug for whom? John and I. That's who it is for. Anyway. So hanging TVs. Yeah, hanging TVs. So it's funny. I just did a TV not too long ago, and so the timing is appropriate because actually one of the things, I have a great tip for it because, of course, this ever-famous handyman went and did the job and then did something improperly and had to go back and fix it, and he was not a happy handyman. So, so it brings up some good things. So with that in mind, we wanted to talk about a couple of things. I think probably the first thing is what's your goal, or what are you trying to accomplish with the TV? And John, do you have anything to say about those particular things? Like, what are you actually trying to do when you hang your TV, right?
Right. I think what you want to do is you want to consider several things. There's the weight of the TV. There's the ability of everybody to be able to see it. Where are you going to put it? Don't put it too high. Don't put it too low. There's what do you want to do when you do hang it? Is it a stationary type of mount, or is it something that with an arm that you can swing?
Yeah, because like if you're trying to do a TV, say, I don't know, like I mean, we've put TVs in kitchens where. So somebody's watching in the kitchen, and actually, as they're moving around the kitchen, they want to be able to move the screen a little bit because they're working at different, basically, workstations. Not really workstations, but, you're working at the island, you're cutting stuff up, and then you're over at the sink, and they kind of want to be able to rotate their TVs. And same thing even in some of the main rooms. So one of the first considerations I think that you have to figure out is exactly what are you trying to do? Do you want this TV, is it just for a stationary viewpoint, like you were saying, or is it going to be moved into multiple locations? A little bit of a thought process, but it's not that difficult. We're big about, like we say, we talk about saving time, money, and aggravation. Well, this is more an aggravation thing. The last thing you want to do is put this thing up and find out you put it in the wrong place or it doesn't do what you want it to do, right? This is all a thought process. You can go through this in the front. And then John, you touched on some things like, so some of the things like when you're hanging a TV, at least in my opinion anyway, is how big is the TV, or small in that stage. And then anytime we're hanging anything, right, we want to consider weight. Do you agree with those issues?
Yeah, so let me touch on something right now on the weight, and that is that when you consider, especially if a TV has a movable arm, you're gonna find out it's just pure physics that you're gonna have what's called moment, and that is going to be the culmination of weight multiplied by the length of the arm, which means, in simple terms, is if you're holding a brick close to you versus holding a brick at arm's length. It's a lot heavier out there, and that will come into play especially when you have little kids pulling on TVs, and around the this arm, because that weight is going to be magnified on that wall.
Well, and I will just add that doesn't matter whether you have kids hanging on it or not. The TV weight is heavier as the arm or the moment gets longer.
My point is that you don't want that TV to bust off and fall on the kids.
That point. Wait, have you met my children? You might disagree with that.
So yeah, all right, kids, swing time. So it's one of those things, and I will tell you, Larry, and I'm sure you can get into this in a second here, is that I've seen professionals that hang these TVs from large stores. I would not accept how they're hanging those TVs. Let's just put it that way, because it's your wallboard is just not designed. I don't care what kind of mount that you have inside that wallboard. Okay, so you might, Larry, why don't you tell us about going ahead and really securing that to the wall.
Yeah, so we'll talk. Let's push that off just for a minute, because there's a few other things, and we will get to that point. That's a whole part of the actual installation. If you're planning for this kind of thing, right? So, John, have you ever gone out on a job and somebody says, "I want the TV right there," and you look at them and you say, "I can put the TV right there. Where are we going to plug it in?"
Yeah, right. And now we've got all the considerations of cables and wires and things like that. Are we going to, go buy those kits and feed the wire up through the wall and those kind of things? And, can we do it? I mean, if that's where they're going to want the TV.
Right, because that's a very different consideration than if you have like now, as you know, John, that like if over a mantle, lots of times in the build of the house, they're actually mounting up power up there, and they're putting a cable box up there. Or they're not so much a cable, but they'll put a conduit up there so that you can snake the wire through. And this last job that I just did, the power was there, and they actually had the conduit. It was really nice. I just snuck my fish tape down the wire and pulled the cable through. It was really, really easy. I didn't have to do anything. But I know I've done jobs where people say they want the wire hidden, right, in either the power or the cable wire, and you can do it. There's a couple of different ways to do it. One is you fish it up inside the wall, which is a more complex process. And then you can do surface-mounted, the surface-mounted conduit, the flat, whatever they call that stuff, the flat stuff that mounts up on the wall, and you can run it down. But these are things, folks, when you're thinking about where you want to hang your TVs, you got to think about these things. Now, one of the good things that's come out over the past few years, especially on the cable boxes, is they have wireless ones, right, John? So that's really nice. So you do need a power source, but you don't have to run the cable wire necessarily.
Mm-hmm. That's right. These things are coming along, but you still got a power wire.
You still have to have power.
So it's you're still stuck with that.
We haven't found the battery powered TV that wasn't built in the 70s yet.
Right.
I'm kind of amazed nobody's done that yet, John. Maybe we should send this off to our favorite tool company, Ryobi, and they could make it work with the 18-volt battery packs, and we can have our own cordless TVs. I'm going to say that and watch. That'll be their next product launch. Anyway, be that as it may.
Call it an iPad.
Yeah, call it an. Well, yeah, that's true. Yes, that's true. You could just put your computer up there and be good. It's kind of funny, John. In our house, we are off the grid. We do not have so-called cable TV. We do everything over the top, as they call it. And in one of our at our condo that we actually have my old laptop is just hooked up. It's behind the TV, and it is plugged into the TV with an HDMI cable, and that's my quote receiver. And then the big TV screen works as a monitor. And actually, really, really like it because it gives me the ability to use it as either a computer or as we watch Netflix and stuff, so we watch entertainment sources on it just through the computer, and it works out really well because that particular laptop, I dropped something on the screen, so there's this great big, I don't use it as a laptop anymore because it's got this giant hole. It's kind of like a hole in the screen, but it works great as a monitor for the TV.
Yeah, and you can do that, or go buy a Chromecast stick or a Fire Stick or those kind of things to do it wireless.
So many options today. So many options. But back to the whole purpose of this initial part of this conversation was, what are you trying to do and what are your goals, right? And, because you have different needs when you go to mount this thing, whether you're doing a stick program or an internet program, or you're actually going to wire cable into it or whatever, you've got different things you need to be thinking about. I think about the only consistent thing that we've quipped about it a little bit, but you do need power as a general rule. So you're going to need 110 someplace close to the TV, or the monitor, if you want to call it that. Whatever you're going to talk about it. Anything else just on the initial planning, John, that we're thinking of?
I will just throw something out from the professional audiovisual group out there, is that generally that putting a TV above a fireplace is not the greatest thing to do. I know that that's a big trend that everybody does, but it's really not the optimal thing for a couple of reasons. One is the viewing angle. Once again, back to your point, Larry, when you're planning these kind of things out, and also that, electronics and heat don't get along too well.
No, they actually don't. And so those are concerns. And then consider also, how much are you actually going to literally burn your fireplace? Everybody thinks they're going to use their fireplace a lot, at least. Well, yeah. I'm going to be careful. Here in the South, I know when I lived up north, we used our fireplace like all the time because it was the only way to stay warm. But down here in the South, we don't. We burn our fireplace 4 or 5 times a year, I guess.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot. So but again, if you live in a northern climate,
those are considerations.
Those are honestly, considerations.
Because when a TV is at a certain angle, that's high, and you're sitting on a couch, like your neck gets
stiff. It does. Yeah. It really does.
Yeah. So it's back to you. It's back to what you were saying, is that you really need to kind of plan this out.
Yeah, and just really think about it, and then do some testing. I mean, you can do testing if you literally want to test how to watch your thing. Put just like any kind of screen up. It doesn't have to be a TV. It can be just a piece of paper, and sit on your couch and look at it, and actually look at it for like a while and see if your neck starts to hurt. Because you're not kidding, John. It's absolutely the truth. If it's too high, it's it's uncomfortable at the angle that you're at. So if you're moving at the back of the room, it's easier than if you're up close to it. So
that's correct.
Things to think about, right? Things to think about. Because the last thing you want to do is go do this project, spend a fair amount of time doing it. Not that it takes a huge amount of time, but it takes some time, especially if you have to run wires, only to find out it's not really what you want. So these are things we can do in advance. What kind of tools do you need to hang a TV, John?
Well, the classic drills. A level, stud finder. If you're going to fish wires through a wall, you're going to need some type of way to do that, like what's known as a fish tape, screwdriver, and then a lot of these brackets come with lag bolts,
yep.
And that's going to require sockets
or a wrench, some way to turn it
right.
in.
And that would be ideal when you find the studs to really secure that thing up there.
Yeah.
It's we were talking earlier that we have talking about hanging art and pictures and things like that. This is a little bit more, you got to really think this one out.
Yeah, this is much more like hanging a very heavy mirror, and you want to make sure that it's right. Plus, if you're doing an articulating mount, then it becomes a very different issue because, like
Absolutely.
you said, you have moment that you need to worry about, and you actually have concerns about where that thing's going to swing, and then you have to have cable allowance for it if it's moving, and all of that kind of thing. So, takes a little bit more thought than hanging artwork per se.
I will add also that the other consideration when you're hanging a TV is your external speakers. So if you've got a 5 to 1, 5 to 2, 7 to 1, surround sound and things like that, you need to kind of look at that. I mean, what are you going to use? An AV receiver? Are you going to use a sound bar? Where are you going to put that thing? So it's, you just have to really lay these things out and do a little forethought. No, it's not rocket science. It's just a little, pre-planning.
It's pre-planning, yeah, and you hear us talk about it all the time on the Handyman Pros radio show. We talk about pre-planning and thinking things through, and just take your time, because planning. You know what, John? It's the old adage, right? 1 minute of planning leads to 10 minutes of save time in the job, or 1 hour of planning leads to 10 hours of save time. And it really, in this case, it's true, because you go and you drill a hole in the wall, and then you have to move it. Well, now you have a drywall repair. Not that it's difficult, but you have a drywall repair, and then you have to paint, and then you have this, and you have that. And why, when you can just sit down and think about it, maybe take a piece of paper and sketch it out if you're so inclined, or do it on your iPad, or do it however you want to do it. So, all right, so you've got it all figured out now. So we've got it all figured out. We know what we're going to do, and we want to put it up. What are like our tips? So we were talking about it before. We were talking about moment, right? If you're using an articulated mount, and particularly if you have a heavy TV, you really have to be concerned with moment, because as it gets farther away from the wall, the pressure on that mount actually gets greater and greater. That's what's called moment. It's angular in its physics, right? As you said. So there's a couple things. One is when I do one like that, any kind of articulating mount, there's a couple of factors that I'm looking for, and the first thing I'm looking for is how big is the mount itself that actually mounts to the wall? How big is the plate, right?
Yeah.
So there's usually a plate on those things. And the more, I'm generalizing, but the more expensive ones have bigger plates. What's the significance of a bigger plate, John?
Well, it's, from being able to adjust for a bigger TV. These things have adjustments on it where they can slide around, and you can attach the TVs. All the modern TVs have screw holes and bolt holes in the back to mount it. There's one other thing I wanted to bring up is that you mentioned that those a decent mount. Those things are pretty heavy by themselves. Just keep that in the back of your mind when you're mounting this thing, because now you not only have that TV, but you have that mount on the wall.
Right. Well, my point on the plate is I've actually seen TV mounts where the TV is heavy and they put a bigger, I'm not going to say necessarily a bigger TV than what it calls for, but I've actually seen drywall get crushed. So the moment is so great and the weight's so heavy on the outside, it'll actually compress the drywall, right? So it indents in the drywall. It's back to that physics thing. If you have a bigger plate, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So the bigger the TV or the heavier the TV. Now, this one I mounted the other day was a TV from 2007, and I hadn't worked on one that long or that old, I'm going to say. And it was a plasma screen LCD. And brother, I'm going to tell you, that son of a gun was heavy. I mean, heavy.
Yeah,
it was probably 75.
for a flat screen.
Yeah, it was probably 75 to 100 pounds. It was a big, heavy one. Now, fortunately, that was a flat mount. It was flat up against the wall, so we didn't really worry about it that much. We got into the studs and and got it in. And again, I don't know did we talk about mounts, John? We did, right? We've talked about articulating, but did we talk anything about flat mounts?
No.
Okay, so folks, if you're not familiar, there are flat mount TVs too, and basically these are mounts that just they just tilt down usually. So they mount flat against the wall, but they just tilt. They don't articulate. They don't move left and right. They just move kind of up and down. Those are flat mounts. They're usually on the lower cost range. But if you're going to just set it in one place and you don't plan on moving, you're going to look at it from the couch that happens to be in the same position all the time, flat mount can be the way to go. So you don't necessarily need to get an articulating mount, because articulating mounts, A, are more expensive, and B, they tend to take up more room on the wall, so the TV sits out. It sits out off the wall a little bit farther, just a little bit, but it still sits out off the wall a little bit. So there's that, and then there's articulating. Articulating basically is going to give you some kind of motion, some number of degrees left and right, and then they usually go up and down also. So you get a more complete viewing angles with an articulating one. But there are different concerns with them. So if this really, really heavy TV that I hung, I wouldn't have hung it on an articulating one ever. I would have always had it on a flat mount, because it would have destroyed the wall. There's just no way you can hang it. It was really heavy. I was really surprised. It's been a long time.
Well, I hung an older TV, an older LCD that was like that, a pretty heavy one, but I think it was 40 something inches that I had downstairs, and I brought it up to the bedroom. Said, okay, I'll put it up here.
Was that the one you put on the ceiling?
Yeah.
Just checking.
And it fell off. No, and so above my bed, and was this thing was really heavy, and I did put it on an articulating arm, but I put it into the studs with lag bolts, and it's not going anywhere. But I know what you're saying, and I know a lot of people out there, you can relate to this, that if you have something really heavy like that and you're starting to move it around, it's you just have to think. Just
think it through.
How you're gonna mount that thing,
So going to actual tips on mounting, let's start talking about some. So I know that this seems simple, right? This is the simple. Measure your wall space, right? Make sure that the TV is actually going to fit where you think you want to mount it.
Yeah.
Right? And give yourself a little bit of room. So don't, hey, it's 25 inches. I'm getting a 25-inch TV. Yeah, that's not going to work. You need like 26 or 27 inches for that 25-inch TV. Just give yourself a bit of margin for error. I know, folks, that sounds simple, but John, have we been there and done that?
Yeah, I've seen it. So if you folks out there, you've got the wall space, and you're said, boy, I really want my TV right there. Just really accurately measure the wall space and take those, if you don't have the TV, take those measurements with you when you go to look for TVs. I'm just saying it's going to make it a whole lot easier so that you know exactly what's going to fit on that space. Because what looks big in your house is going to look really small in a big box, store that you might be buying a TV in.
Yeah, it's true. It actually is true.
You're going to come by with something and say, man, I love the size of that TV. And you get home and it's like, whoops. So just make sure that you know that what the measurements are all the way around.
Yeah, and the second thing is make sure you measure your mount. So back to this TV that I was talking about. I went down to the local big box store and I bought the quote universal sized mount, right? So I'm buying this basically they're just kind of like a flat bar that you put up there. It's a bracket, but it's a flat bracket that mounts up against the wall. So I mount the thing up there, no problem. I put the mounts on the TV. I go to hang that thing up. 26-inch mount on the wall, 27-inch spread on the mounts on the TV. Guess what? Didn't fit.
Oops.
Oops. Yeah. So, lesson learned. Again, been there, done that. Make sure that your TV mount is the size, that your TV, the holes in your TV are the size, and like if you're doing a flat mount, that the spread is big enough for the bar. I fixed it. I went down and I found a longer bracket, and voila, it was fixed. But had to make the trip to the store, right? We're trying to save you time, money, and aggravation. The money wasn't the issue, but the aggravation factor was pretty high. Mm-hmm. So, measure the spread on your mounts. Make sure that the mount is actually going to fit the way it's supposed to, and do that because, well, guess what? Been there, done that. The other thing is generally preferred to hang these into studs, right? John, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. If your first move should be finding the studs to hang it, hands down.
Did we mention that handyman services by? Oh, never mind. You said mention studs. I thought of you and I, but anyway.
That is the thing that you should be looking to do first and foremost. By all means,
get your stud finder out and find the stud, or look for nail pops or however it is that you find a stud. But definitely try to mount them into the studs if you can. I don't care what they say. I don't care what the instructions say. Oh, it'll handle the weight. Putting it into drywall. Yeah, we've seen that happen where the drywall's pulling out. And the next thing you know, we're getting a call for a drywall repair, and they're looking for a new TV. So
that's right.
Those are the big things. Is there anything else we need to actually talk about when they're actually doing the mount?
Well, not really from the mount perspective. If you get it into the studs, you're golden. I would say that when you do mount it, you take a little drill like a 16th or something like that, or an 1/8 inch drill. Let's say an eighth inch drill, and drill in there. Make sure that wood is coming out with that drill. Because you want to trust your stud finders and stuff, but just make sure that you're in the middle of it and not on the side of the stud.
Yeah, okay? Particularly if you're using a big lag, right? If you're using a big lag bolt, yeah.
If you're just gonna bite into a piece of that stud on the one side or the other, that's not going to do it. So basically that the studs are 16 inches center, and measure. So all right, that's a little tip right there.
Yeah, that's a good tip actually, because if you miss that stud or you only catch half the stud, you might as well not even have the bolt in there. the lag bolt in there, because it'll just pull out and you'll have a mess on your hands. All right. Any other tips? So I do have one story. I just have a quick story. So I actually got called to hang a television on a dock on Lake Lanier, and actually it was a very cool mount, but the fellow wanted his TV mounted on his dock because he wanted to watch Georgia football while he was swimming in Lake Lanier. So it was a pretty cool mount. Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah,
that's nice.
It was pretty cool. He had it set up on a wireless system, so he had power on the dock anyway to run his stuff. So we mounted it up on his dock, and sure enough, I go down there one Sunday and they're all sitting in the water watching the football game. I was like, that's kind of cool.
What would it be like to sit in the water and watch episodes of Gilligan's Island, where you're stranded? Anyways.
We finally get John Singer out there in the reality. All right, that I think is going to do it for hanging a TV. If you do have any questions for the Handyman Pros for John and I, please send us an email at questions@handymanprosradioshow.com, or join our Facebook pros at Handyman Pros and join in our conversations. John, you know what? I think, John, the spaceship, it's landing.
And Larry, what are you going to do?
I think I'm going to look at it. No, I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to take that thing apart.
There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.